Hello, this is Jeff Johnston. Welcome to the Living Undeterred podcast. I have a special friend and guest today, and I'm super excited about this show. When I designed this mindset, the Living Undeterred kind of ideology or thought process, I thought of all these different people I could have on, people that have handled addiction, alcoholism, substance abuse, some trauma they had in their life. And then I thought, after a while, I'm going to kind of run into the potential of talking about something too frequently. So I started thinking, I got to broaden my horizons a little bit. I got to start bringing in guests that encompass the living undeterred mindset, but not from a addiction or recovery type angle. So I brought in my brother last couple of podcasts ago, and he's a ghost hunter. That's a whole different show, and I'm excited about getting that one out there. And then obviously you with fishing, Gary, and I'm going to have you introduce yourself here in a second. And I have a lot of fishing in my background as well with my brother Dan and with my dad. And fishing has kind of become the glue that held together a lot of people in my life that have dealt with tough things. So I want to introduce you. You're Gary Speicher. You are our guest today, and we have a unscripted conversation. Mm-hmm. We're just going to I'm not sure where this is going to go, but I've known you for a super long time. I remember a story my brother Dan said back when he managed Fin and Feather in town. Yeah. And he said, Jeff, there's this guy that comes in this nice car. Yeah. And he wears these nice suits. Yeah. And he always buys the nicest poles and lures. And I said, who is this guy? And he goes, I don't know, but he's in the insurance and investment business. And I said, I got to get in that business. And I'm not kidding you. That was when I was 23 or 24 years old. And fast forward, and now you're a part of our firm, and you're retired from a practicing advisor, but you are still a friend and a mentor. So with that's a long-winded intro. But let's talk a little bit about Gary, why you're here, and kind of what our goals are for today.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say thank you for those kind words and the opportunity to be here. Our undeterred watchers should know that we are recording this in the office that I occupied.
That's right.
From 2009 until 2017.
These are hallowed grounds here that we walk by, and we look at it saying, man, so much good karma came from this office. Yeah. That's why when you left, we decided to retire it and turn it into a studio.
Well, I'm glad you did, because during the days we did tell a lot of fishing stories.
And you still do, Gary.
Yeah, we still do. Yeah, I'm just tickled to talk to you about being undeterred from taking on interests. We spent, and we both spent our whole adult lives helping people prepare for retirement. Mm-hmm. And we've seen too many people get to that point, Jeff, where they don't have any hobbies or interests that they've developed along the way to occupy their time. Right. And so I think we do a great job of helping people prepare financially, but I think we got a ways to go to help people prepare emotionally mm-hmm. for what that change is. And so today I can tell you that I miss being with you and Molly and the gang, that I miss being around our clients, and I'll have those memories forever.
Right.
But this transition would not have been as easy for me if I hadn't had this interest of fishing.
Right.
And so I have been tournament fishing.
It's more than an interest, by the way.
Well, yeah.
I would call it an addiction, a compulsive
they call
behavior.
It's
a good addiction.
Yeah. And it's interesting this last year with COVID, how many more people across the country have gone outside and taken on these outside sports and activities. Right. They tell me that the fishing license sales in most states where there are good fish to catch are up 40 or 50%. And our friends up at, up in Wisconsin that make these St. Croix rods,
shameless plug for my brother's company.
Plug for Dan Johnston. They can't make them fast enough. So, and there's a shortage of fishing equipment in the country. So 1995 was my first fishing tournament as a co-angler, And I have fished competitively since then.
Mm-hmm.
I've fished in 108 events, chronicled in my fishing resume.
Who carries around a fishing resume, Gary?
Well,
Only Gary Speicher.
You never know, Jeff. You might need a new sponsor. So,
Hey, I got a question before we get
Yeah.
too far into the fishing.
Yeah.
Just to peel back a little bit and kind of explain our relationship and kind of how it's led to today. And I talked a little bit about how I first heard of you. And I came into the investment insurance career at a really young age at 23. Started working here. Actually, I started in Iowa City first, and I moved up to Cedar Rapids. Really didn't know of too many what I would consider successful advisors. And the word advisor back in the day was kind of not used. It was more of an agent or an agency or insurance agent. That was really, I think, the label that we were given. And it's probably true because most of what we used with our clients were insurance-related products, life insurance, annuities. And so, but you were always had the perception of more than an insurance agent. I thought that was I was very interested in that. You had your company, Financial Planning Services, right?
correct.
So you had the financial planning name out there kind of way before people started using it. Now, every insurance agent calls themselves a financial planner. So, but that attracted me to what you were doing. And then I know Jonas Everett had talked to you way before you were thinking of retirement and kind of asked you, I think over lunch, hey, Gary, what's your exit plan? And you're like, I don't know. I don't really have an exit plan. And then a couple of years negotiating, and you ended up joining my group, and I was your branch manager, and we did many seminars together, many workshops together. You were an initial part of our radio show, which is still on the air.
Yes.
I think I was told that's the longest running financial planning or financial show in Cedar Rapids, and I think we're in our 11th year now. And that's the Premier Investments of Iowa Financial Hour on Tuesday nights at 6 o'clock on WMT Radio.
That sounds like a
Shameless
plug.
plug.
I'm sure Doug Wagner would be proud of that.
Yeah, so that's been a great, and so, and you and I have been through a lot together. You were there when our oldest son, Seth, died of a heroin overdose. You provided a tremendous amount of support for me and for my family, and I'm very indebted for that, and for you and Sue for being there for our family and giving us the prayers and the comfort and the solace and the peace. And I wouldn't probably be where I'm at if it wasn't for people like you in my life. So with that, I guess this Living Undeterred thing kind of evolved, and now I'm amazingly meeting some tremendous people that I never would have met had this not had happened. So one of my lessons I'm trying to teach people is that out of chaos, great things can happen, and we don't have to use negative events to define who we are, in a destructive way.
Right.
And so fishing is just kind of one of these things like golf, and I'm going to have a scuba diving show, and my brother hunts ghosts, and it's like we need to have, Gary, the ability for us as humans to disconnect from reality. And that can be from the stresses of job, it could be a tough marriage you're in, it could be a flailing business, it could be the death of a child.
Yes.
And golf for me is one thing I talk about in my book, but for you it's fishing. So going back to when you first got into fishing, other than just, a young boy being interested watching the bobber disappear, was there anything that just got you into fishing that you want to talk about, or is it just the curiosity that you had with the outdoors?
Yeah, my recollection is going way back when our children were in school, and I remember that Amy went to a bass fishing clinic over in Tama County, and I grew up on a farm, Jeff, and when we weren't working, we were working. So I didn't have any outside interests really. Yeah. And so I credit Amy for getting me started to have that awareness.
How old were you about when that's to happen?
That would have been late 30s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I just envisioned you were fishing since you could walk.
No, I'm a latecomer. And
I did not know that.
Yeah, and so I was in my mid-40s when.
So there's hope for all of us.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there is. So the tournaments gave me that break from this office and the work here to pursue a great hobby.
Right.
Probably the number one thing that I gained from the tournaments was not the knowledge of how to catch fish, but people knowledge.
Yeah.
And I was able to connect over all these years with lots of great anglers, and the stories and the life challenges that many of them went through, following some of them right to their gravesite.
Recently, you've had a few fishing friends
Yes.
that have passed. Do you want to mention any?
Yeah, I've got a picture of Tommy Scarless right behind you.
I've heard his name many times.
Tommy's a native of Waterloo. I remember calling on him when he was working with his dad's company, and I walked into his little office, Jeff, and he had fishing magazines stacked this high.
Right.
And he said, "Spike, someday I'm going to make a living catching walleye." And he did. He
One of the best, I heard.
he's one
Yeah.
of he's been credited as being one of the best walleye fishermen. And I will tell you, I drew him in a number of tournaments. He was my pro, and I was his co-angler. And I've gone on some long rides on some big water with him that he's reminded me of. But I'm just glad that I had that opportunity to not only fish with him, but we're right in the height of sport show season now.
Yeah.
I participated in a lot of the sport shows where Tommy worked, and sat in on a lot of his workshops. So for those people that want to Google Tommy and pick up information from him, he is definitely one of the legacy people in our industry. And I'll finish by saying 2 years ago, he was inducted into the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame. After falling out of a tree stand about 4 years ago and nearly dying, and then getting back on the tournament trail, a year later, 2019, he was diagnosed with cancer of his brain.
Yeah.
And he lasted until this past fall. So, it's people. It really is. It really is people. And I could probably spend the rest of the day telling you stories about fishing with him on the boat, but we don't have to do that.
We still got 50 minutes. So
Yeah,
we
got.
Hey, I did want to mention kind of an observation that I have seen just in my life experiences, that quite often people from the outside look at an industry like fishing or, say, golf, where I really found a lot of comfort after Seth died, and they don't understand the family and the culture and the togetherness, the bonding that you have in those things. And it can save you. And I think being part of a club or an organization that you have been involved in prior to a traumatic event happening. I know when our son passed, and I've been to some other personal events in my life, I've always had friends to go to. But we have to. I mean, we can't do this by ourselves. We have to have an outlet. So fishing can be a release, but you still have to have conversation. You can't go fish by yourself every day. It's like golfing by yourself every day. It's just, it's not enjoyable. And I think the human relationships we build, the interactions, is what's key. So I've always been amazed after I got into knowing you as a friend, and also with my brother Dan, following his unbelievable career at St. Croix. The just family that you guys develop, and I think it's awesome. And I think anyone out there that's dealing with even things like addiction, substance abuse, mental health issues, depression, anxiety, find an outlet, find something to do. And so fishing just has been your thing. And I think you are a tremendous ambassador for fishing.
Well, thank you.
I follow you on Facebook. I follow your Walleye Wisdom story, and the passion just exudes from you. And I have to say, I think a lot of people probably have got into fishing because of what you do and what my brother Dan does at St. Croix. And I just think it's interesting, and I think it's well needed in a time with COVID and all these stresses that we have, for people to get out of their house and do something.
Well, one of the goals that we had a number of years ago was to create a walleye fishing club for Cedar Rapids and Iowa City.
And what's it called? The Walleye Fishing Club of Cedar Rapids and Iowa City?
It's called Crandic.
Oh.
Yeah, Crandic.
The same as the Insurance Association here in Cedar Rapids?
Yeah, exactly. Or the train that runs between the two cities, Crandic Railroad. good friend Dave Nichols put it together. Got help from the lawyers in the law firm where he's worked for many years, and did all the paperwork to form it. And
it's just for walleyes?
Well, anyone that's interested in fishing, but
so any type of fish. So
right.
bass fishermen could be a member of it.
Yeah, exactly. And we set up a tournament schedule, and we had 5 tournaments scheduled.
Do you have a website?
And we have a Facebook page.
Facebook page. Okay, so
Krandik.
People could reach out on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And unfortunately, COVID only allowed us to have one tournament last year, and only allowed us to have one meeting as a membership. And so we've been so looking forward to 2021, and we had our first membership meeting in January, and we were going to have our second here in February, but this polar vortex put us off till March.
It's not one thing, it's something.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let the people that are watching this know, that are in our area, that we do have a fishing club. And there are fishing clubs everywhere.
Right.
Yeah. So if you want to have that association with people that love to fish but also love the interaction, most clubs have programs during the year. They'll have tournaments, and many times they'll have some kind of a project that they're supporting, that they're raising money for. And many times, Jeff, those are oriented toward youth and young adults. We've helped support the that catfish tournament we have here for the Boys and Girls Club every year.
Right.
And so Krandik is going to be much involved in that. So I guess for me, I'm moving more from that tournament fishing, even though I'm going to keep that up. I'm moving more from that to helping the club recruit new members and be part of the education that we're providing there.
So my brother Dan helped spearhead a fly fishing fundraiser we did.
Yeah.
And we didn't do it last year because of COVID. And so that was the same year we did our first charity golf tournament.
Right.
We have a scholarship set up through the Greater Cedar Rapids Community Foundation, which you helped me kind of jump on that. And then we also have some other things we're doing with my nonprofit. I have a nonprofit I started called the Choices Network, which we're raising awareness and funds to help adolescents make better choices on things like vaping and drinking, and ways parents can communicate better with their children with that too. Something that popped into my head, and you know me for a long time, I have what I consider high-level ADD. If you ask people that I work with, it's the highest level ADD, so I tend to jump around. Molly here is off screen laughing at me right now. But so Pheasants Forever is an organization that is used for people who hunt to raise awareness and to help the the pheasants and things like that.
Yeah.
Is there the equivalent of that for fishing?
Yes. We have what's called the National Professional Anglers Association, the NPAA. That is a national organization that when I joined probably 20 years ago, we had less than 50 members.
In a national organization?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and originally it was started to promote walleye fishing, but we have a new director by the name of Pat Nye, and over the recent years, Pat has helped expand the organization's reach so that we're reaching out to people that catfish, people that bass fish, people that crappie fish, people that fish for those southern fish, the redfish, and those fish down in the ocean. And I'm very proud to have served with the NPAA on the board and helped provide some direction. But our organization, Jeff, has grown to over 1,500 members now.
That's awesome.
And it's awesome to see that, because it's another way for someone to be part of something bigger than they are, to access meaningful discounts on fishing products. Our friends at St. Croix, by the way, say if you want to buy 3 St. Croix rods this year as an MPAA member, you receive a 30% discount.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you know how much these are, so that's good, man.
Yeah, I just, when my brother's fishing, I just pop open his trunk and take what I want, and he doesn't even notice.
No,
so
I'm sure he does.
I get the brother discount.
You should. But the NPAA And you can sign up online at npaa.net.
Good to know.
Yeah, the dues are only $100 a year, and I figure that the equipment that I purchase through the NPAA sponsors, I save enough on off retail to pay my dues. The best part of the NPAA is the youth side and the young adult education. We started a 501c3 like your nonprofit a few years ago, and to allow members and others to donate money to provide product at tournaments, so that when you go to one of the major tournaments and you take children or youth with a parent or an adult or a grandpa and grandma, we put on seminars for the kids.
Awesome.
And all of that product, Jeff, the rods and reels, the tackle boxes, the T-shirt with our names on it, all of that is provided through that nonprofit organization. It's called the Future Anglers Foundation. So I've been very pleased with how we've been able to grow that and grow the scope of that organization.
For people watching this that are really new to this tournament fishing
Yeah.
world, I've caught the bass stuff on TV a
Sure.
lot, the what's it called, the Bass Masters or whatever they call that, the big national tournament.
Yeah.
And I think for people that don't understand, the first thing is, man, what do you do with all these fish? Do you guys donate them to, people at homeless shelters and to eat the fish? And it's like, no, you're not killing the fish. So at least in the bass world, they don't. I'm not too familiar with the walleye world, but when you guys catch the walleyes, it's catch and release, right? Most of the time?
Well, the tournament venues have been, other than places like Lake Erie.
Right, which is
catch and kill.
Yeah, because it's an aquarium there.
Yeah, it's an aquarium. There's what do they say, 112 million walleyes in Lake Erie now, which is
crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
But for years, you would bring your fish to the scale. You keep them in your live well with water recirculating.
Yep.
You put them in a bag with water. You take them up, and then you would have volunteers take those fish and take them back out on the water where you were fishing and let them go.
Okay.
But you still have a mortality.
Oh, yeah.
You still have
Yep.
some.
Yep.
So the one tournament series that's called AIM, AIM, they are strictly catch, record, and release.
Right.
And so you catch that walleye, you lay it on a certified scale that
Yeah.
everyone uses. You take a picture of it with a camera chip that's been provided to you by the tournament.
Right.
And you get a photo of that fish on the board, you record it, and then you get a photo of that fish being a hero shot with your partner before he or she tosses it over the boat.
But aren't walleyes a little bit less tough than, say, a bass? I mean, I remember when I fish walleyes and my dad fills up the live well, there's always a few dead ones in there floating around. I have to think in that process you probably have a pretty high mortality, or not?
Well, not at all. And the key is releasing them as quickly as you can. And so I think, this is just my observation, that most of the tournaments going forward are going to move away from the catch and bring them in and weigh them to actually catching, recording their length using a standard weight chart.
Yeah.
So based on the length of that fish, it would weigh
Yep.
X. And that's really good for the resource. And so what that allows you to do as a tournament director is to go into bodies of water, particularly in summer months, where you normally would have a high mortality if you brought those fish out,
Yeah.
to be able to catch them.
Because the warmer water affects them differently than colder water.
And the biggest thing is the depth that you're bringing these fish up from.
True. Yep.
So if you're bringing them up from the river,
Yep.
that's one thing. If you're bringing them up from 60 feet in
Yeah,
Lake
as a scuba
Erie,
diver, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
You got to be careful when you ascend, do your safety stop and all that. So if you're bringing a fish up
Yes.
quickly, they don't have the ability to do that.
That's correct. They die.
Yeah, they die.
Yeah.
So I guess, do you have any interesting fish stories, or any, like, what's your favorite? I have my favorite fish story. I have a number of them. One was the marlin I caught in Cabo San Lucas, which I ended up stuffing, and as I paid a lot of money for it to have them mounted, I found out it was just spray painted cardboard. So my marlin is not my marlin. It's just, on my wall. It looks like a marlin, but it's not.
Got it.
I also have some funny stories when I was a child or a youth, and I caught I had a big catfish on one time, and I was reeling it in our farm pond, and it was the biggest catfish I ever had in my life. And I remember saying to myself that you're gonna laugh. I remember saying, if I was speaking to God now, I'm saying, if I catch this fish, I'll become a priest. And I caught the fish. And I was probably 12 years old. I didn't even know what God or priest was. I just wanted I wanted to do whatever I could to get the fish. What's the highest probability of success? Well, I'll negotiate a deal with God. So my next door neighbor, Don Oakes, was very into, he was a very spiritual, religious gentleman, and he kind of held me to that as I grew older. And, so anyway, that was an interesting story. So apparently I owe that priesthood for somebody down the road. So
well, I think for me, my change on the tournament side came in 2011, and you were certainly aware of this. That was my rookie pro year on the FLW Walleye Tour, and so.
Is that the one with the big, huge check that you have pictures of?
Well,
or is that a different one?
that check's up there. It was 2 years previously in 2009. I finally, after all those years, won a tournament as a co-angler.
I remember.
So Sue says, Sue will take the dollar value of that check, Jeff, and she'll divide it through by all those tournaments I fished and the entry fees and the motel.
You're still a little behind, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think so. But I decided, hey, I'm 63 years old. I think maybe I should go for this.
Yeah.
And so bought the Ranger 620 with the Evinrude motor. And by the way, Evinrudes are no longer made.
Oh, they aren't? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, last year, Bob Baudier did away with Evinrude motors.
I didn't know that. Wow.
And it's a sad story, but...
So did they become another brand, or are they just gone?
They're gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Weren't they a staple forever in that?
Forever.
Yeah.
One of the oldest running...
right.
Outboard motor manufacturers in the world. So they blamed it on a number of things, but I think COVID was part of it. So I still proudly wear the shirt because I still have the Evinrude motor, and they're going to offer protection for us with parts for a number of years. But anyway, did the pro thing, and I did the pro thing from 2011 through 2019, so that would be 8 years. And over those 8 years, I probably had never worked as hard as I ever had in fishing, preparing for the tournament, researching information, getting the boat ready, having all the equipment, the rods, reels, the baits, and then trying to create an environment where someone I maybe had never met before is going to hop in the boat and going to be my co-angler. And so one of the joys that I had during those tournaments, Jeff, was I would do at the end of each tournament a video interview talking to the co-angler about their experience and how we were fishing, what we were doing. And I'm pleased to tell you that over all those years, those 9 years, I only had one co-angler say, Gary, I'd prefer not to do that. So I learned over those 9 years that I wasn't that good at it.
But you kept trying.
I kept trying. So I kept living undeterred,
Yeah.
working toward
There's always
a
a way
paycheck.
we can sprinkle in the living undeterred mindset.
Yeah.
So Gary, I am interested in something that I thought was kind of interesting with my brother Dan. My brother, and obviously I'm biased, is the greatest bass fisherman I've ever seen in my life. And I would say probably fisherman. Now, I've only fished with you less than a few times, so I can't compare. But my brother Dan is like one of those savants where we'd be out fishing at Lake McBride, let's say, and I'd be right behind him, this is back, years ago. And he would be catching fish. And we'd come up to this big tree area where there'd be, a tree fell down the water and would be a nice habitat area for large bass. My brother would feel sorry for me. He'd say, well, come up front, Jeff. Here's my pole. And go ahead and catch the fish. And you're laughing already.
Yeah.
So I'm throwing these jig and pigs and all this other thing in there. And I'm just getting frustrated and embarrassed. And I'm, Dan's 1 year younger than me, so we're very competitive. And I'm like, I can't. And Dan would say, Jeff, step back. I'd hand him the pole. And with first freaking cast, he would pull out a 4 or 5 pound bass every single time. And almost to the point where I think he was subconsciously mocking me, like trying to humiliate me. But I grew up fishing with Dan like that. Walleye's the same way. We could be up Minnesota or Canada fishing, and Dan's walking around the boat all high. You think I'm intense. My brother's as or more, especially fishing. He just never has an off button. So where I'm going with this is this. I asked him one time, why don't you do this professionally?
Uh-huh.
I mean, literally, just go make
fish?
yeah, exactly. And I think he maybe dabbled in it or something. I'm not sure if he ever did. I think his answer was pretty much, Jeff, at that point, it would take the fun out of it for me.
Ah.
And boy, I thought about that. Not that I have any professional skills. I mean, I can't be a pro golfer because I suck. But for Dan to say that, I thought that's an interesting observation, because there's a lot of people in life that are highly talented. My brother Steve's, again, a very gifted musician. And, he's taken it to the highest level he wants to go, and that's playing for this Elton John tribute band, which is phenomenal. But, at some point there becomes a respect for the career you're in that, hey, I don't want to go any further. I'm happy where I'm at. Did you ever question your decision to jump in tournament fishing, and did it ever take the fun out of it for you?
Well, yes and no. I didn't question the decision because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it and that I could compete at that level. And I think I was satisfied. Yes, I did that. And yes, I survived it. And yes,
it's a grind.
It
I mean,
is,
you guys would go out and pre-fish for 3 or 4 days.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm like,
mostly
that's pre-fish.
Yeah, mostly a week to 10 days for some people.
That's my son plays competitive college golf, and they play
Yeah.
one practice round.
Yep.
They don't go in a week before and play 7 practice rounds. I mean,
Right.
that's a massive commitment you guys make.
Yeah, it's sometimes, Jeff, it's almost overwhelming.
Yeah.
When you think about all of the decisions that you have to make, not only before the tournament, but during the tournament.
Right.
And most of the successful walleye anglers are going to tell you that it was the decisions they made during the tournament day.
The adjustments.
The adjustments.
Yeah, because you don't think about that, but a college basketball coach or a football coach at halftime is always making adjustments.
Yes.
Fishing, you got to do the same thing, right?
Yes, you got to do it.
Weather changes,
Exactly.
temperature drops.
Oh yeah. And if you're going to enter tournament fishing to make money,
Interesting.
I'm going to say no. It's like the Marines. Many are called, but few are chosen. So you've got so few at the top of the walleye game. I think if you look at tournament fishing, you mentioned earlier the bass tournaments.
Yeah.
And in the crappie tournaments and the redfish tournaments, actually the bass tournaments have so much more incentive financially for people to fish compared to the walleye. I know that this year, 2021 will be the second year of a new tournament schedule called Head to Head, where you have a walleye person in the boat fishing with a photographer, camera person in the back, and you're live streaming.
Oh, really?
You're live streaming
Interesting.
on Facebook, and you're competing with other anglers who have the same setup.
Like a split screen type
Yeah.
thing? Oh, cool.
Yeah,
That's
and,
cool.
And last year they ran the tournament for the first time, and it was so successful. They're coming back.
Like the video games you see where
Yes.
you can fish video game fishing.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Head to
Interesting.
head, and big entry fee, and it's by invitation only.
Again, I was always I guess gain respect for those that are highly talented in life and decide to just stay in the enjoyment zone.
Yeah.
Not take this too seriously. But again, there are people that like you that take the plunge, and again, you have a lengthy resume there of all your tournaments.
Well, I'm happy to go back and fish on the co-angler side, and
Yeah.
so I have the last couple years. I had a little roadblock to the tournament fishing last year, and you're aware that back in 2010 I was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that because
Yeah.
I think you embody that living undeterred mindset. Because when you first told us about the cancer, a million things go through our minds, like what type of cancer, how severe, and you've educated us. I think it's CLL. That's
Yes.
the name.
Yes.
So, and that means what type? If you don't mind, what type of cancer is this, and
Well,
how's it going for you right now?
It's thank you for asking. It's chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and it's not uncommon in males over age 60, some females, but not as many. and it's where your bone marrow produces cancer cells right along with your good ones. And my family doctor diagnosed it, had me go to an oncologist here in Cedar Rapids, got the word. And I remember that morning, Jeff, when Sue and I came out after seeing the cancer doctor, and we just hugged each other in the car and we cried because she didn't paint a very optimistic picture. And so,
Sue or
to us, the doctor. Okay. So we ended up going to the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, I remember that.
For a second
I remember
opinion,
that.
and met with an older physician there who listened to our story, and we chatted about it, and they took a bunch of blood up there at the Mayo Clinic. And when he called me, he said, Gary, yeah, you've got CLL, but you can live a long time with it.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself. And so I've been blessed that I've been able to do that up until derecho hit our community last year.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the hospital for 5 days with something called cellulitis of my left arm, which was caused initially by getting poison ivy. And then bacteria of some kind got in my arm, and it was terrible. It took my immune system, which is kind of key for CLL, and it did this to it. And so since that hospitalization, my current oncologist has had me on a monthly infusion of something called immunoglobulins to help rebuild my immune system. And his concern is not only for the CLL, Jeff, but it's also with COVID.
Yeah.
And hopefully coming up here in the next couple of weeks, we get our first COVID shot, and that's going to help.
I remember you talking about that.
So yeah, I guess what I've learned in the tournament fishing game is that you see the smiles and you see the glad handshakes and you see all the happiness on television, but you know what? Behind the scenes, there are a lot of people that have had to deal with personal, not only the emotional, but also the mental, the physical issues, and they've persevered. And Tommy Scarless is one of those people that, to me, persevered in the sport and continued to be successful in spite of the challenges that he had.
Some of the things that have helped me deal with, our situation, and it's more than just Seth dying of heroin overdose at 23. There's other things in our family that have came before that and came after that kind of makes our story, unique to us. But that resiliency factor, all these things are extremely important. And we kind of go, I guess maybe we could segue a little bit into that, the concept that everyone has, as I say, everyone has shit going on. We all have issues going on, no matter how successful you're presented to the public, or maybe in reality you're a successful, quote, person, whether it's financially or looks or career-wise, that there's always something behind the curtain there. And I think at 54 years old, as I navigated through this trauma that we went through, well, believe it or not, this October will be 5 years since they found Seth in a hotel room, October 4th, 2016, which is just mind-boggling to me that it's been that long, but it also just feels like 5 days to me.
I know.
And I try to equate it for those people that haven't dealt with the loss of a child. The only possible thing I think of is maybe a loss of a spouse. Not even a parent or grandparent, because you kind of expect them to go first. You don't expect your spouse to die first, and you certainly don't expect your children to die first. But it does. That's the game of life that we're in, and we're not always given the opportunity to die in the correct order. There's never a good day to go. It's always difficult. And I think what I wanted to do is spend maybe a little bit towards the last part of the show here, maybe sharing some of our own personal issues that you and I have dealt with. People that follow my story know that I was a compulsive gambler in my 20s and 30s. I was an alcoholic for a long time, and finally have a very good relationship there. I just choose not to drink. I don't even like to call myself an alcoholic because I think labels suck personally. I just make decisions each day not to drink, and it's as simple as that for me. So I think what I wanted to talk to you about is, you've had your cancer, not a scare because it's real, and in your family, and my family as well, and I would assume every single family watching this, there is somebody that's touched by addiction. It could be alcoholism, it could be drug abuse, it could be opioid abuse. The prescription painkiller problem in our country is just, it's indescribable. I can't, and everybody is going to be touched by this, whether it's an immediate family member or a neighbor or coworker. If not already, you will be.
Right.
And unfortunately, COVID isn't making it better. Social media is not making it better. All these societal problems we have are just being magnified now when we have to sit at home and look at each other and go on social media and see all the toxicity out there, the negative political spin, the hate and the vile conversations people have are just disgusting to me. And cracking open that beer seems to be a nice escape for people. And you and I are trying to say, how about you crack open that new fishing pole?
Yeah.
Crack open those lures.
Yeah.
Get that dozen minnows. Take your son or daughter out fishing.
Yeah.
Get out of the kitchen. And that's kind of what this show is about today.
Yeah.
So, without naming names and all that, but do you mind covering a little bit about some of the addiction issues that you've had, either ahead of you or behind you in your family tree? I know every family goes far enough, they're going to find someone touched by this stuff.
Yeah, my father, Jeff, was an alcoholic. My home life was not the best growing up in that environment. I will tell you that even though my dad died in 2017, I still love him.
Oh, yeah,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, and my mom died in 1988 from cancer of the breast and then ultimately into her lymph nodes. So, yeah, I've had to deal with sibling issues.
Yeah.
Where one of my siblings, my sister, to this day blames me for leaving home and going off to college because she feels like I left she and my brothers without anybody to act as a buffer between Dad and them. So yeah, I've been there, done that with them. And then personally, we have 4 children, Chris, Amy, Matt, and Sarah. The oldest, Chris, turns 50 this year. The youngest, Sarah, turns 40 this year. It's just hard to believe where the time has gone. But our daughter, Amy, moved to Chicago, worked, met a guy, got married, and we had a period of time there of over 2 years where she never talked to us. And all we could do, and I wanted to insert this component, but the faith component was pray.
Absolutely.
Was pray. And she ultimately went through a divorce.
Yeah.
She came home. It wasn't until after the move home that we discovered that she had been suffering with spousal abuse.
Yeah.
And talk about, hurting this. So I am so happy for her in her new marriage to John, and I'm happy where she is in her life.
Awesome.
And so for me, maybe that bad memory, Jeff, it's there, but it's gone.
By the fact you just talking about this, to me, is breaking down the stigma, because I think the problem is families keep these secrets and they don't talk about them. And I've had people come to me saying, well, does it bother you that you talk about your alcoholism, or does it bother you that your son died of heroin? Why don't you say he died? And I'm like, no, that would dishonor him, and he would then be, I don't know how, you can't say these things correctly to appease everybody, but I want him to die with dignity and gracefully, and by continuing his story and using the word heroin, I can honor Seth that way for the next person that thinks about putting heroin in his arm. They may think about my son, and that's what Seth would want me to do. I don't think he'd want me to sit here and not talk about him. So I admire Amy and anybody that has gone through these things to be able to talk about them. I had a guest on, Nancy Barrows, that's coming up, will be featured as a podcast guest. And she talks about coming out, and this is so amazing, the people I'm meeting, Gary. She was sexually abused by her grandfather for 10 years. For 10 years.
Oh, my.
And now when you speak with her, she smiles, she laughs, she's exudes just a tremendous amount of love. And, I get emotional because it's like she could easily just go kill herself. and use that event to define her in a negative way. But she's refused to participate in that. And I'm admired by people like this. And so I hear stories, you talk about Amy, and, and just the fact that I know she's comfortable with you talking about that. I met another lady, an individual. I hate that word, lady. It sounds so old school and sexist, but another human being.
Yeah.
And her name is Beth Ann Schaefer, and she was another guest on my show, and she founded Note Beverages. And her story involves her husband, Bart, and his alcoholism, and now it's her ex-husband. And he actually came on and talked to me when I first met her, talking about how, and they're divorced, and they have a great relationship, and they're trying to be good parents. And there are rock stars out there, there's superheroes out there that have handled sexual abuse, alcoholism, all these things that people find ways to victimize. And that's something I'm trying to stop, is this ridiculous victimization that we have as a culture. The cancel culture thing, where you can't talk about topics because people want to shut you down. And that was our country's built on freedom of speech and freedom of ideas and freedom of thought. And how in the heck are we going to stop the velocity of these issues by not talking about them? I don't think that is a good way to deal with problems. So sure, do I enjoy talking about my drinking problems and my gambling problems and my collapse of a 21-year marriage and the death of a child? I mean, are these things that I look forward to talking every day? No, I don't, but it keeps me going. It gives me some reason to get out of bed and not just go punch a clock and collect a paycheck and age. I don't have any desire to do that. So, going back to you being vulnerable and just talking about this, Gary, there's going to be people watching this going, yeah, maybe we need to have a talk with our son. Maybe we need to go talk to a marriage counselor. Maybe we need to go talk to a pastor. Maybe we need to go talk to Gary or Jeff. And that's really, I've kind of thrown my hat in the ring for the rest of my life. This is what I'm going to be doing. And you and I, ADD's kicking in again. We have a difference in belief structure. And it works. Your belief structure works for you. My lack of a belief, I guess, in those areas works for me. And we're both doing very good things. And I think part of my mission or my story is to tell people, hey, it doesn't really matter what you believe, Gary. It matters how you behave, right? I know very good people that don't really have a whole lot of structure in regards to faith. And I know very bad people that don't. I also know very bad people that are very strong in their faith, and it can go both ways. And I think whatever you finally gravitate to get you to live an inspired life right now, then I'm all in. I'm all for it. And so you are to date my biggest contribution to my nonprofit.
Oh, wonderful.
You are, and it literally makes me want to cry, because it came out of an hour-long breakfast you and I had when I was putting my book project together. And most of my contributions have been from me. I have no shame in admitting that the majority of the money is coming into my nonprofit is coming from Jeff Johnston. And you were just absolutely touched by the story, and you wrote a check. And to this day, that is still the largest single contribution I've had to the Choices Network. So
thank you.
I appreciate that as a friend. And that money you gave is now going back into the community, and hopefully we can get in front of high schools and organizations to talk about addiction, substance abuse, talk about the bad things, but then talk about fishing and golfing and ghost hunting. And just things that you can do to preoccupy your misery, so you're not sitting there thinking about all the bad things that are happening to you in your life.
Well, it was
that was a long dialogue I just had, by the way.
No, but it brings up. It was just a year ago that I called you from our winter retreat in Florida, and I said, Jeff, our son Matt, I think he's reached the bottom.
Yeah, I remember.
Remember that? And we talked about it and what you had been doing in your work, and your example challenged us, but we were able to find a very high-quality facility here in Iowa, and Matt was in agreement.
Yeah, and that's the first key.
And that is.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, how do I help? And I say, you can't.
No.
Matt had to say, and I'm so proud of Matt. I mean, he's a rock star to me.
Tell me, we are so
every
proud
day he's
of
a rock
him.
star.
Yes.
And he's not, he's capable of this is going to be with him forever, like it is for me. And once you acknowledge that, but for Matt to actually ask Gary is the first step.
Yes.
And so I applaud him.
Thank
for
you.
that.
Thank
for
you.
that.
And
Yep.
like you were so proud of him and his success. It's coming up on a year, and
Awesome.
And I'm sure, Jeff, I'm sure that during the last 365 days that the devil has tempted him a little bit.
Oh, more than a little bit.
But
Yep.
I think becoming a member of AA,
Awesome.
because there's that support group,
Yep.
and you find that you're not alone. And so I think we have to be willing as parents, as spouses, we have to be willing to put our feelings aside and really focus on that individual and think about what's really best for them.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful also. I think the other part of this for me was how proud I am of our family who came together to support him in his decision, and that 30 days that he was there, to be there every weekend, to be there at the end when we had that, and you're aware of this,
Oh, yeah.
that
Yep.
family get together.
Yep.
And
I've been there. Yep.
yeah, and to be strong for him. So there's a lot to be thankful for there. And so for me, my faith has been very important through this whole process of
Right.
living life. And I can share with you openly that every night you're in my prayers,
Well, thank you.
and your family, and your
I'll take
your
any free or financial. I'll take any free prayers or financial contributions. Sorry. I
Yeah,
said that.
but Premier. So living undeterred for me, I think the 8 or 9 years that I was in this office before it became a studio were probably the best 8 or 9 years of my career. So I have to thank you for giving me that opportunity. And then since walking out the door, literally, and coming back occasionally, to know that there's still a place that I can come and be with my fellow advisors and the staff like Molly and Dee and Linda. It's been part of that transition for me. So
Right.
I said earlier, I made a comment about how difficult it is for advisors to look beyond the financial part of retirement planning.
Right. You have to.
And I think that Premier has done an excellent job of looking beyond just how much money is going to take me to live, the lifestyle I want to live, to asking those important emotional questions,
Right.
and to be aware of the family dynamics that can impact a person's retirement.
Right.
A kid moving home,
Yep.
a kid going through a divorce,
Right.
losing.
I don't even
I
like
mean,
the word retirement anymore. It's
Yeah,
just it's an antiquated.
Yeah.
It's a dead word to me. I don't like it. It just doesn't embody. The next level shouldn't be the word tired in it.
Yeah.
Retire. I don't like it. So I think kind of changing that narrative. But
We'll have to come up with a new word.
well, I had one client one time tell me embarkment.
Embarkment.
Look at it as a transition. And
Okay.
So, and we could talk for another hour just on that stuff. But to kind of put a bow tie on this, we're kind of getting close to the hour, which is just ridiculous because I feel
Where
like
does
we
it
could
go?
keep talking for another 2 hours. But for everybody out there that is which is are struggling with things, which is probably everybody. I don't think there's anybody ever made it through life unscathed. We all have something. Nothing's worse or better than anyone else's trauma. It's just unique to you. It's different to you. So that uniqueness also means that the solutions are unique to you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a unique situation. My solutions are unique to Jeff Johnston. Well, you have a unique situation. Your solutions are unique to Gary Speicher. So anyone watching this right now that's thinking, I wish I was as strong as Jeff and Gary. I don't like the word wish and hope either. I think there's other words more action-related words we can put in there. And some of the things, Gary, that have helped me, meditation's helped me tremendously.
Okay.
People ask me all the time, how do you get through every day? Well, I meditate every morning, 10 minutes. It's a guided meditation app I use. that's the most popular way right now for people to deal with anxiety and coping mechanisms is to initiate some type of meditation. And it's a non-religious or a secular type environment. So you don't have to be a believer in anything. Matter of fact, meditation's the opposite. You just witnessing your thoughts. You're not even judging them. So it allows you to really get your anxiety, get your stresses that you put on yourself. Most stresses don't exist. You create the stress yourself. Thus, you can also have it float out of your mind. So meditation's been great for me. Exercise has been good for me. Eating healthy has been good for me. I'm at that mid-age where I think it's important I invest a lot of time into my mind and my body to make it to be your age. I'd love to make it. I'm 54, so 60 is my next goal. Let's get to 60.
Yeah, and I made it to 73, but Sue is 74. She tells me that I'll get to live a little longer to be with her because she's older than I am. But, no, I think the people that are watching this today should consider continuing to watch these Undeterred broadcasts because you're bringing on guests with different perspectives that all offer hope.
Right.
And that word, along with the word alone, are really just the exact opposites. So
I like that.
There are so many people that are alone.
Yeah.
They might be around lots of people, Jeff, but they're alone.
Yeah.
And your work that you're doing is offering hope to anyone that wants to take the time to invest in themselves. And I think that you're to be congratulated for this work. You're to be encouraged in this work. And I hope that people will contribute financially to grow the work that you're doing through Choices Network and continue to watch Undeterred.
We often run around thinking that we're in a canoe by ourselves out there, or a kayak, fighting life against the stream and all these terrible things that have happened to us. We're not in a canoe. We're in a massive boat with millions and millions and millions of humans on this planet that are all dealing with their own personal things. And so I hope by being able to have the Living Undeterred podcast, the blogs I write every week, I would encourage everybody to, and I'm trying to get this down, I'm not the best at this technology stuff, but to give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcast.
There you
go. Is
go.
that right, Molly? Okay.
Yeah.
And to subscribe on my Living Undeterred website, you can subscribe. And so that would allow me to keep pursuing these ventures. But, well, Gary, I think you and I could continue this, and we will continue this, and you become a more of a friend than anything else for me. And you've talked me off the ledge on more than one occasion. Keep your phone on, because I plan on having you talk me off the ledge as I grow older and probably deal with more things that come up in my life that I'm preparing myself for.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to taking the St. Croix rod, going over to the Mississippi River, dropping this pretty little jig with that plastic tail down.
Looks tasty.
And it looks good, doesn't it? Looks like if you were a walleye or sauger, you'd bite it. So I'm looking forward to getting back on open water. This ice stuff is not as much fun when you're older than when you're younger. So,
well, Gary, I want to thank you again. For those that would like to get more information, it's www.livingundeterred.com. And again, I encourage you to subscribe on that site. You can get the podcasts, blogs. Eventually, when we get speaking engagements set up, we'll have those listed. So with that, I thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being the guest today, and thank you for being vulnerable. And with that, I like to close every show. Whatever you do today, make sure that you live
Undeterred.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Jeff.
You bet.